Welcome to episode 123 of the Forward from 50 podcast, where we interview people over 50 or pursuing new direction for their lives. It's an opportunity for men and women to tell their stories their way and in their own words. I'm Greg Gerber, the founder of Forward from 50, and your host for today's show. Today I'm speaking with Leslie Wyatt, a woman who spent decades as a freelance writer and homeschool mom to 6 children. But after turning 50, Leslie began exploring untapped creative passions and, in doing so, uncovered some powerful truths about life, love, and personal growth. In our conversation, 3 key takeaways stood out. Leslie returned to painting and discovered her love for writing romantic fiction, especially with characters in their 60s, navigating life and love with authenticity. Second, we must learn to embrace, not fight, the aging process. Leslie discusses how society's obsession with youth can prevent older adults from fully enjoying the unique blessings of their current season of life. Third, joy and purpose are not tied to productivity. Especially for women, Leslie urges them to give themselves permission to do things simply because they bring them joy and not because they serve others or generate income. Leslie's story is honest, heartwarming, and a reminder that we can all still bloom even in our 60s. To give us more details about what gives her life purpose and meaning, please welcome Leslie Wyatt to the show. Thanks for joining me today, Leslie. I appreciate it. I understand you were a freelance writer for many years.
Yes, actually for, I think, more than 30 now.
Okay.
It's crazy.
But after you turned 50, it went into a little different direction, didn't it?
Yes, it did. Actually, 50s were a pivotal point for me. My kids, which I have 6, that I homeschool. So I was busy those middle years. But as I reached my mid-50s, they were graduating. My last couple were graduating, and that kind of shifted how I spent my time and led into multiple directions.
I understand you're writing romance novels now.
I am. Forever, I wrote middle grade novels, stories, articles, plus articles for adults that were in magazines like Hobby Farm, Cat Fancy, that type of thing. I still do, write for adults, mostly info sheet for the jobs that I have taken on through the years. I was slogging along on a middle grade book that I was working on and just making a lot of headway, just over editing and whatever. And my oldest daughter said, "Mom, you should try something different." So she sent me 3 prompts, one of which was the color blue. And somehow that idea started to grow on me. And I thought, what if I wrote a romance, wrote for adults and wrote romance? So I just did that. And I chose to make the protagonists in their 60s, which really is hardly out there. Or if it is, it's written by younger writers who really have no idea what the 50s and 60s and beyond are. And it's super fun, super easy for me to write because, of course, it's my demographic. And I set them in contemporary settings, so I didn't have to do a ton of research, and just fell in love with the whole thing and the, I guess you'd say, the platform it gives me to really promote relationships between people, fixing what's maybe not working so well, coming back, bringing all, by the time we've reached our 50s and beyond, we have a little more wisdom than we had when we started out. And being able to apply that in my writing is super fun.
How many books have you written now?
I've got 2 that are published right now and 2 that are one that I'm going to send in to my publisher in May, and another one that will probably follow in June. So those are the ones that are actually at the publisher. I've written a couple of other romances that are not ready to go. I think they were more for me just figuring out the characters and such, but I'm going to take the plot in a different direction.
Why romance novels? Are you romantic at heart?
I think I am a romantic at heart, although it was funny, the first one I wrote, I wasn't even sure how to define romance. What is romance? The genre itself, you can get that. You can read a book, you can do some Googling, and you get the basic under things that genre will bring to the thing. But as far as myself, I'm like, would I know romance if it hit me in the face? I'm not sure. So, in fact, one of my books, When I'm 64, kind of came out of that question. And in it, I did discover, yes, I am a romantic. And also that love is a beautiful thing. And everyone wants just to be loved and to love. And a lot of things get in our way. And that's part of what I love about writing romance is creating characters with problems that are very much the everyday that the rest of us deal with. I don't write about, I don't know, people I don't write about real people, but I don't write about situations or things that I'm not familiar with. Like, I'm in the middle of America. It's not a lot of discretionary cash. I have the privilege that some don't. So I'm just somewhere in the middle. And so I write about people in the middle, most of us, and I hope the most of us, and just about situations that we each may be dealing with in our own lives in that age group. So if I'm writing about protagonists in their 60s, they've got grown kids. If they have kids, they may not have a partner anymore for one reason or another. They may be on a subsequent marriage. There's just a lot of things to write about. But the things of our 20s, 30s, 40s concerned as much about that. We're dealing with other things. And so it's super fun to write about that and I guess you'd say any mistakes I've learned from to be able to put that in there so readers, when they read it, are like, oh, that's what I've got going on. I wonder if I just really hopefully making the world a brighter place one book at a time.
I like that, Leslie, that you're doing it in situations that you are familiar with and that we can identify. So you're not creating these romantic novels where you're carting off to Cartagena and encountering some dark-haired man on a beach and falling in love and all that kind of stuff. It's just more everyday kind of thing. I like that.
Exactly, because we might like to dream about that, but the reality is that's probably not going to happen for 99% of us. Yeah, just choosing the everyday, because I think that's something that's really close to my heart is the magic of the everyday in its own lives. My life is very unseen, I guess you'd say. I'm not a sparkly character that lights up a room. I'm actually quite an introvert, and I'm really quite okay with that now. And yet there's beautiful things in my life. And when I talk to people and interact with them, I realize it's the same for them. They've got this whole world that I don't know anything about. And if I will listen and if I will watch, they will share their world with me. And it is every bit as beautiful and as nuanced as mine, just may not be mine. And so I love exploring that thought in writing and just really celebrating our everydayness.
I like that you're also approaching people over 60 and using them as the main characters because many people over 60 have given up on the idea of love. It's either never happened or they've lost their life partner, etc. And they don't think they'll ever give it back, or they think they no longer have anything to offer anybody else. And that's not entirely true at all. So when people see in your books that they do have something that they can offer, an ordinary everyday person, I think that will be very encouraging for people to read.
Yes, and I think so too. In fact, the readers that I've talked with have been really encouraging for me in that way because they'll say, I was going through a really hard time in this realm and just didn't know if I was what I was thinking. And then I read your book and I realized there maybe is hope for me, or I shouldn't just write it off. I shouldn't write off at least getting to be friends with someone
Exactly.
and see where it goes, because I explore that as well in different ones of the books. Has to start with friendship, doesn't it?
Friendship
For
first.
us. Yeah. And certainly in our later years, we've already made those other kind of mistakes or whatever, and we're not really wanting to sign up for another hard slog if the first one was hard or whatever. What we really want is to go through life loving and being loved. And if that means there's a partner in there that we could live in a healthy relationship with, my gosh, time to do it, because you don't have kids, you don't have to worry about kids. You might have kids, and that will be a different kind of problem, which I do address in my books, depending on the plot. But it's just wide open, really.
That's right, yes. In addition to writing, I understand you are also an avid artist as well. What kind of artwork do you pursue or do you specialize in?
Yeah, I paint with oils primarily, and I guess you would call me a realist slash colorist. So I colors fascinate me, or just I love the mix of colors and how they all play together. I don't do photorealism, but I do realistic paintings. I like paint architecture, so like bunch of bridges. I'm always painting the Golden Gate Bridge for some reason or another, in different lighting and different angles. I love the angles of things. I like to paint houses, like older houses, Victorians, and different interesting ones. I like to paint birds and landscapes of varying kinds. I don't feel like my landscapes at this point have broken into being able to create the epic feel that you could just get by looking with your eyes. I'm still working on that part, but I love little vignettes of things.
Do you do photo or do you do paintings of people?
I have,
Okay.
but I tend to not do that because an art teacher I had was explaining why people can be difficult to paint. And he said, because we're all experts at what humans look like, always looking at ourselves and other people. And they may not know how to paint something, but they'll be able to spot what's off. And I am not fascinated enough with being spot on with people that I want to do that, unless I'm just making a random person. But that's not as interesting to me as if I were painting someone real. And people have asked me, would you do like a, what's the word? Commission of my dog or of me or my kids. And I shy away from it because this is something they love. If it doesn't look like them, then it's a miss. And I just don't like to go there. So I'd rather paint birds or something.
So why oils? Why not watercolors or pencils? Why did you settle on oils?
I think it was a fortuitous discovery more than anything. I had gone after my kids had transitioned out of homeschool and were in high school and public school. I had these hours in the day, and I thought I need something. I think I might need something to move into once they move out, something that can bring in some income, whatever. So I thought I'll go back to school and I'll get a degree in graphic design because it was something that I loved, the creative part. I was already doing the writing, so I thought, oh, this is great. I discovered, number one, I really don't like creating art digitally, but then I took a painting class, which was part of my degree, and wow, I discovered I loved it. I had painted a little in high school, but I didn't know if I had any potential, and I just kind of let it go. So I rediscovered it, and I rediscovered it in oils, and I'm a tactile person, and oils are so silky when you work with them. They're I love that about them, and they have a luminosity that is, to me, just it gives a depth maybe that I haven't been able to achieve with acrylics. Now, I've seen some lovely watercolors that I feel are so luminous. I've dabbled a little bit with watercolor, but I usually stick to oil. I might someday take a watercolor class and get better. But yeah, I love oils and I love mixing colors.
That's right. I've heard that it's easier to do when you're doing it with oils than it is with colored pencils and even watercolors. So it allows you to do more of the blended things and be nuanced in the way that, especially with landscapes and the shadows and the flowers and all the other kind of stuff that are incorporated into that. Oils seem to work better for that.
I'm about to do an art residency at the Whiskeytown National Wildlife Refuge and or National Recreation Area, actually. And that's going to be super fun because I will be painting a historic house there, and I'll also be writing on a book that's set in a fictional national park.
How cool is that? The one thing I like about your story is you said that you dabbled in this in high school, or you realized that you had the potential, and you raised 6 kids, and that took up all of your time. So you pushed that potential, that desire to the back burner. But now that you're older, you picked it up again and realized that you did fall in love with art and you're good at it.
Yeah, exactly. And I will say that I didn't, in high school, was apparently a hidden talent. My art teacher did not see anything to encourage. I don't know. My life might have been different if I'd taken art in college. I took music instead and realized I didn't, as an introvert, I just wasn't going to be a teacher or a performer. So I dropped out, did other stuff, got married, had kids. But yeah, now it's like a hidden treasure that I came back to. And now in this season, I have the leisure to do that. Fun.
Right. Yeah. Now that you've got more time on your hands, it's the ideal time to go back and explore some of those things that you thought you might be interested in, but had to give up because life interfered in what you were wanting to do.
Exactly.
So, having 6 children, what are their ages or the age range?
Yeah, my oldest is 40 and my youngest is about to turn 26.
Okay.
There was about 32 years in there where we had somebody at home forever. It's felt like forever. I love them all, but I'm just glad they're now in their adult stage and it's great. Maybe because we had that many and they dribbled off one by one, it wasn't like having one and then it's over and the empty nest is so sudden. Mine lost its sticks one by one until I didn't have any. But I have a great relationship with my kids, so it did. So yeah, I'm not doing the little kid stuff, except with I have a couple of grandkids, which I love. But I actually thought when I was in my 30s, 40s that I would miss it tremendously when my kids left. And I do miss them as people. There's so many ways to stay connected nowadays, FaceTime and visiting and stuff. It's not like it would have been 100 years ago.
That's right.
But I really love that I've gotten to rediscover myself. Many things about I never actually knew or lost somewhere in childhood.
The relationship changes too when the kids get older. You'll become less of the parent where you have to dictate how their lives are, and you become more of a coach where you can just suggest and talk about life and share interests and really get to know each other as individuals rather than a parent-child relationship. It can be
Absolutely.
very good for a family.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the natural course of things. And I think that's one of the things I'm learning in my 60s is why in the world am I trying to be 30 again?
Right.
Any realm, physically, mentally, lifestyle, like I'm not actually, but that's where that's seen as at least portrayed in media and stuff is the peak of the human existence and everything else is downhill after that. But I just think, wow, you know what? I have never been 65 before. I am like perfectly 65 but I am not perfectly 30.
Right.
Let me be what I am in this season and enjoy what I've got and not be looking back, wishing I'd done a better job, which I do. But I think we all tend to do that. We see things that we could have done better. But meanwhile, this life is going on. So I don't want to spend my days now wishing that I'd done better then because I can't change any of that. I might be able to repair if I haven't already, but I can't go back and live that again. And not living now with what I've got is not a good thing because I have this feeling that in 5 more years, I'm going to look back and say, why didn't I live my 60s or at least fully engaged? So I'm really like to advocate that we don't spend a lot of time mulling over what was. We really inhabit what is.
That's an excellent point, and not enough seasoned citizens do that, especially women, and even men too. They get the filters to make them look decades younger, etc., when we should be embracing our senior status. And we should...
I know.
Exactly. It's not many people get to live this and enjoy it. And when we're pretending to be younger than we really are, it doesn't fool anybody to begin with, and it makes us feel uncomfortable.
No, and this is actually a soapbox I could get lost on, so you'll have to rein me in. But I feel like between media, which, you know, has exploded in the last 50 years, if not 60, then there's this whole persona that we have bought into, grew up with, bought into, and it's perpetuated that, and we're boomers. So coming out of the wars and first generation that didn't have to fight. I guess they did have to fight in Vietnam. Anyway, just the feeling like the world is ours and we'll never grow old. And then we start growing old and nobody tells us how to do that.
Exactly.
I'm really thinking about that. And that's part of what goes into my books is I think nobody told me when I was 20 and 30 what it was like to get older, how my body would change. Nobody wanted to talk about the change. That was like verboten. And so it was just this thing that was going to happen to you that you really didn't know what was. And if you try harder and work out more and eat healthier, it would never happen to you. But it does. It still does. And I think that's a lie that really permeates our society, that especially for women, and I think men, I don't know where men are at in it. But I do know women are very much saddled with this thing of you could be younger, but we can't. We've got our genetics. Okay, yes, I could be thinner, but do I want to give that amount of focus and intensity to something that's outward anyway, and that really isn't going to make me younger?
Precisely. Yes.
It might make me thinner, but it's never going to make me younger. And thinner does not equal healthy, or except from across the street. Maybe I look like that across the street. But wow, what if we embraced our age and talked about it so that our younger generations could actually know how amazing these years are instead of dread it and fight it? Really, what if they embraced it like we didn't know to do? When I was 30, I thought being in your 60s, you would fall off the other side of the world. You basically done all the important things, now you're just waiting to die. And it's so not that way. But I've had to discover that on my own. I'm telling my kids, I tell anybody that wants to listen, guys, it's good. Every decade is good. Every year is your year. So let's do this. Let's not waste our time trying to look like a movie star or be successful in ways that everybody out there, which is that ubiquitous they that we really don't know, but we're driven by, are expecting of us. You know, what if the measure of a life well lived is to really, truly inhabit your days and be who you are and be kind to other people? That to me is a super important piece. We're not just living completely for ourselves, but if we're kind, that covers the whole thing, because it'll lead us to do things that will contribute to humanity.
Exactly. Society tells us we have to be younger and younger. And in the past, grandparents were very active in the lives of their children and grandchildren, multi-generations living in the same house. Now we don't have that. We might see our grandparents once or twice a year, or maybe a couple times a month if you live close by. And so you really don't get to experience that and see that aging process. And I've interviewed a number of women who have talked about menopause and how completely unready they were or unprepared for what that was going to be like, because nobody would talk about it really as to what it was like verboten. And then they were crushed by it. So rather than being crushed by it, prepare people for it so that they know what's coming, how it's going to impact them, and they can deal with it and they can flourish during that time.
Exactly. Be proactive about what can be done to offset the harder symptoms. And then just it's a whole thing. It really is.
I agree. Another thing that you had talked to me about earlier was that it's important for seasoned citizens not to measure their worth or contribution by how much they produce. I think that's something that comes out of our boomer lineage. We're always working, always striving, always achieving. Right. You came to a different conclusion. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I'm coming. It's there. I see it, but I still labor under those feelings sometimes. In fact, it's funny. The fact that I enjoy writing so much right now feels like maybe I should get up and do some work for a while. Here I am. I'm spending like 4 or 5 hours a day writing, focused. But because it's fun, because there's enjoyment in it, this little voice in the back of my brain is, you should do something productive here. And I'm really actively trying to rewrite what that means. What does productive mean? I think unfortunately, in our capitalist society, a lot of times it's tied to money. Time is money, that whole thing. And what can I monetize this? And that in itself is a problem too, because that shuts down creativity, I believe, when there's pressure to monetize what you're doing. Yeah, I mean, I think our generation, I think like my, probably because she's my daughter, my oldest daughter struggles with this too. But I think so that's the older edge of the millennials or the middle edge of the millennials and up. They also feel a pressure to produce, but they also feel a pressure to be famous or to do something. And that pressure to be known is really big in the younger generations, driven by social media and such.
Exactly.
So they're doing things that maybe aren't as authentic as they could be. We were talking earlier about how we might look on video, and I was remembering the Jetsons cartoon where there was that one episode where when they'd wake up in the morning and somebody would call, they'd hold up a mask where their hair was all fixed and their face was all perfect, but behind it they'd just barely gotten up and were totally ravaged. And I just think, what? I do see a trend with the younger generation that they're hungry for the authenticity of just being real. And so even in the social media, it's coming off that far swing into, this is my daily. It still look a little sanitized and beautiful, but still better than it was. And I feel like we as older people who are learning that on a new level can really be a voice for that. Say, we don't have to look like we're perfect. We're not perfect. We're human. But here's what my humanness is doing, and here's what your humanness is doing. We don't have to always produce. Just be me. And I love that.
People do not identify with perfect. It's just hard for them to do that. And people try to project this perfect lifestyle, and I don't think people relate to it. And if somebody is out there being authentic and honest with their warts and all, showing for everybody, they say, I can do that. If she can do that, I can do that.
I know. And I love that because the other just perpetuates comparison.
Yes.
And none of us do well when we feel like we're not measuring up to something that, frankly, some of us never will. We don't have the body for it. We don't have the face for it. We don't have the skills for it. So we don't have the money for it. Discretionary cash is a huge factor in some of those things. So how much better that we're all just authentic humans together. We don't need to have a persona. We can just be ourselves. And that's what everybody's hungry for anyway.
What's still on your bucket list? What are some things you'd like to accomplish in the years ahead?
Yeah. Oh, good question. It's funny because I have a bucket list in one form or another in a couple of my books already. I don't literally have a bucket list of my own. I just tend to, something catches my interest, so I do it. Like a few years ago, I started karate. And so I'm now like a degree brown belt in karate. Yeah, I started that when I was 59, I think. And so, yeah, so I got to that point, and then about a year and a half ago, I started having some joint issues, so I let it go. But I love doing it. I love the challenge and doing hard stuff. I think one of the things still on my bucket list, I've always dreamed about hiking or riding, like one of the big long trails. So we have the Pacific Crest Trail over here that goes from Mexico to Canada. And in fact, part of the Pacific Crest Trail is very doable within an hour from me. I can hop on it. I have this dream of doing that, of doing a section of it solo, just because I've always wanted to. And I might still do that. There's no reason I can't. I think I get overwhelmed with logistics. Okay, how much am I going to carry and how much am I going to cash and all that? But it's really because I just haven't aimed myself at it. I'm in the perfect place to do it. I'm healthy. I can do it. So I might do that sometime in the next few years.
A friend of mine is on the Appalachian Trail right now as we speak. She is doing a 300-mile section of it over the next couple of weeks. And her goal is to complete the whole thing, but she learned early, her first experience, that there's no way she was going to, in her mid 60s, be able to walk that entire length of trail by herself under those conditions. So she does it in a little chunk. And I interviewed a woman a couple of years ago who did the GR5 trail in Europe, which goes from Belgium to France. And it is more walking than hiking. And it goes through some spectacular areas and very historical parts of Europe,
My
especially
goodness.
Germany, walking past or through these old castles and things like that. And I thought, wow,
It's hitting
that
you.
is something that I would like to do.
That's fascinating.
Mhm.
I should check into that. I have a friend that has hiked what is the hike in Spain where there's a name for it. It's really well known.
Okay.
Anyway, where you can do that every year, join a group that's doing it. It's
Okay.
kind of almost like a pilgrimage
Okay.
thing.
Interesting.
I'm not sure how to do that, but that sounds really fascinating. Just to wind through all those old
Right.
communities because it's also old over there compared to over here.
Exactly. If you could turn the clock back, is there anything you'd do differently?
I think what I would do differently was I would prioritize individual time with each of my kids.
Mm.
I grew up in a big family and we just did everything together.
Mm.
So that was my model, and that does work for crowd control and group activities. But I feel like I could have easily, if I had the vision for it, I could have carved out an individual time for each child once a week
Mm.
where nobody else was. It was just them. And I did, as a middle child, I was aware of the fact that there was never any pictures of just me. So I made sure each one of my kids had plenty of pictures with just them, not everybody. But I missed this point, and I really would do that differently. But I'm doing that differently now.
Mm.
So I make a point of connecting with each of my kids individually. In some ways, that's easier as an adult, but because you're not having all the other kids you got to do something with while you're
That's right.
occupy while you're spending time. But I could have done it even half an hour. I could have done it if I'd realized.
That's
So yeah, I'd like to do that.
one of the things that I did is I took my three daughters out one-on-one every month, let them plan the
Nice.
activities as what we were going to do and things like that. For me, it was another thing
Oh,
on my
that's beautiful.
schedule. And so I looked forward to it. It was enjoyable, but I had no idea how impactful it was until they were in their 20s and told me how much planning went into each one of those outings and how much they looked forward to it. So I'm going to try and incorporate that with my grandkids as best I can as they grow up.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, thanks.
That's beautiful.
Do you have any advice for people over 50 who might be struggling with what to do to give their life more meaning or purpose?
I'm probably not the official person to ask that because I feel like I've had some things easier than some people in that I am working right now. I work as an operations manager for a green coffee sourcing company and that whole thing, but only a couple hours a day.
Mm.
So I have it pretty easy. I have more time than some people that are trying to still support themselves or they're doing. But I think it would be, and this is maybe for women that struggle even more than men, but don't feel guilty about doing something for yourself. That's
Exactly.
only for yourself. That doesn't directly make anybody else's life richer per se, but it is like the oxygen mask on the airplane. If you don't put yours on, you can't help your kids, grandkids, the people around you. So find just without any pressure, because again, a need to produce something that you could do or a reason to be is pressure. But if you could think of it as what I like to do, what would bring my heart alive, what would I look forward to doing? Not what's another thing to check off my list so I can say I'm a viable person. It's no, what? When I think of it, makes me smile inside. See if there's anything. If you can't think of anything, think back when you were a kid. What did you like to do as a kid that you always hated to leave when your mom called you in for something? It's like, what did you love? I talked to a guy the other day, and he had gone through a real rough time with substance and stuff like that. And he said his counselor gave him that advice, and he said he's thought about it, and he realized he loved being outside, just being outside, playing in the water and stuff. So at 40 something, maybe he's closer to 50, that's what he started to do. He went up into the hills here. He found that he loved gold panning, and he literally has transformed his life just by being rediscovering what brought him alive as a kid and just really giving himself permission to do those things. 'Cause we grow up and we're still the kids we used to be inside,
Yes.
but we've got all these responsibilities and things. And so, yeah, so we could just, what does your child, what does your inner child really still love?
I love
You know,
that story about that guy. He's outdoors in nature. He's grounded to the earth. He's doing what he loves. You were right. I think women in particular are more focused on having to serve somebody all the time because they're nurturers. But you can only serve from the reservoir within you. So something you do has to fill you up. And so it's important to take time to do the things that you love that give you the energy that you need to serve all these other
absolutely.
folks.
No, absolutely. And I think women in particular, and I'm not saying men don't feel this, but women in particular, I know from all my friends and all the women that I talk to that they almost feel guilty to matter as much as anybody else. And that's messed up. And I know it, but I've struggled with it myself. If there's something that I want that nobody else wants, it's almost like I feel guilty for asking for it or making it happen because it's not going to profit anybody but me. It does down the road. But I think that, in fact, that's what's going into the book that I'm currently working on is how two people can matter at the same time. Can I be a caretaker and still matter instead of just let my life exist to make everybody else's happen? I just think it's super important. It's something we can learn in our 50s and 60s and beyond that maybe we didn't realize was a question before. We just did it like a role that we were expected to do. But now is it our chance to do something different, to discover how to matter and how other people can matter. And that's the way that we're going to be healthiest for the people we love and the people we impact.
That's a good point because a lot of us grew up thinking that self or paying attention to self was sin. And you can't do
Right,
that. You always
right.
have to be giving to others, but it does go back to that. You can only give how much is in your reservoir. So you got to fill yourself up. Yeah.
Exactly. And that doesn't have to be selfish or self-centered. It just needs to be balanced. I'm toying with the idea in this book that I'm writing about what if, because the gal, the protagonist, is 65. She's come off a long stint of caretaking. And she's like, how do I even change this behavior of mine where I just default to caretaking? And she comes up with this scheme that she just do it by rote. One time she's going to choose what matters to her. The next time she'll give the other person what matters to them. Just kind of like start somewhere and then you can hone it. But at least question. It's not selfish.
I like that you focus on people who are over 60 as protagonists because at that age, we don't care anymore. We just don't care what people think.
I know that. I love that about being in my 60s. And that was coming on in my 50s, but boy, by 60s, you're just like, I don't know why you're spending that much energy over that. That does not matter to me. I'm not going to
Exactly.
give my energy to that. And that's a great freedom, actually.
And it's important for us to convey that to the younger generations who are so focused on trying to please everybody and make everybody or appear to be successful and have it all together. So they need to see other people who are different. So
Exactly.
how can people connect with you if they'd like to meet you or buy your books or learn more about you or even take a peek at some of the things you've created with your artwork?
Yes, I have multiple ways. I will issue a disclaimer. I'm really not very good at social media, so I post periodically on Instagram, and it's under my name at Leslie J. Wyatt.
Okay.
It's just my name. At my website, same, lesliejwyatt.com. And I can get emails through my website. You can also, if you want to be on an email list or you just want you want to say hi and talk to me, my email is leslieJwyatt@gmail.com. And I'm creating an email list where people, where I periodically give like peeks into the book I'm working on or a painting I'm working on, a neat thing I've run across, something great that somebody is doing, that type of thing. Not a spam, not a sales thing, but just that. You can see my artwork I actually have an artist thread on Instagram, but I keep forgetting to post there. It's called Art for the Rest of Us. Yeah, that's a channel there. And I only post my paintings there, but I have them on my website. And I have an Etsy shop
Okay.
called Leslie's Paintings and Prints. And I'm just getting that up because I only have so many walls in my house that I can hang paintings on. Besides, I do sell in a gallery here, but also I thought I could list on Etsy and maybe people would like that. So I sell originals on there and I'm also selling prints. So they can go on there and I don't have them all loaded, but I'm getting there. I make myself do so often. So yeah, it's just,
Thank you for sharing your story with me today, Leslie. I really appreciate it. I love that you're so authentic and that you are exploring a variety of things that fill you up and enable you to just enjoy life to the full, past to 50 and well into your 60s.
thank you, Greg. It's been great talking to you. When I came across your podcast, Forward from 50, I just thought, amen, and let's do it because that's what we all really, it's like we get to do that. And I really appreciate getting to chat with you and hear your perspective, although I think I mostly talk. So I didn't listen very well.
We need the encouragement of other people who are doing what we want to do so that we can see what's possible. I let
Yeah.
people like you talk because you have far more to say than I do. So thank you again for your time. Leslie Wyatt's Life After 50 is a wonderful example of creative rediscovery and heartfelt authenticity. While she spent much of her adult life writing articles in middle grade fiction, it wasn't until she entered her 60s that she ventured into a new literary space, writing romance novels featuring characters her own age. Her transition was sparked by a suggestion from her daughter and an ordinary writing prompt, the color blue. That seed grew into a passion for telling love stories which are grounded in reality, not tales of glamorous getaways or whirlwind affairs, but deeply relatable stories featuring older adults dealing with everyday challenges. Her protagonists are often widowed, divorced, or empty nesters navigating new possibilities for connection. They're people who may have written off the idea of romance until it unexpectedly comes back around. I think everyone just wants to be loved and to love, Leslie explained. And by the time we're in our 50s and 60s, we've got a little more wisdom to bring to those relationships. Her characters reflect the complexities of aging, which include growing children, health changes, and shifting priorities. Through them, Leslie explores themes of second chances, enduring friendship, and emotional healing. For Leslie, writing these novels isn't just about storytelling. It's a platform to validate and celebrate seasoned love and to remind people that they still have much to offer. Beyond writing, Leslie is also an accomplished oil painter who favors bold colors, realistic scenes, and the architectural beauty of everyday life. She recently landed an artist in residency at Whiskeytown National Recreation Area, where she'll be painting and working on her next book, which is set in a fictional national park. It's a beautiful example of what happens when you return to a buried passion. In high school, no one recognized her talent for art, not even her teachers. Yet today, Leslie's artwork is exhibited in galleries and sold in her own Etsy shop. Her life proves that it's never too late to rediscover a hidden treasure or to find new purpose in old dreams. She also advocates strongly for embracing the present rather than longing for the past or obsessing over youthful ideals. I've never been 65 before, Leslie explained, so why would I want to try to be 30 again? Let me fully live in the season I'm in. I couldn't agree more. This mindset fuels her mission to help others, especially women, to let go of guilt and perfectionism and to embrace the richness of life now. Whether she's writing, painting, or enjoying time with her adult children and grandkids, Leslie has learned to value being, not just doing. And she offers gentle encouragement to anyone over 50 searching for purpose. Look to what made you come alive as a child. That spark may be waiting to reignite something meaningful in your life. You can connect with Leslie through her website at lesliejwyatt.com, browse her artwork on Etsy at Leslie's Paintings and Prints, or follow her on Instagram at Leslie J. Wyatt. Her books, When I'm 64 and All of Me, are available on Amazon and in other bookstores. In a world that often devalues age, Leslie Wyatt is using her voice, her pen, and her paintbrush to say otherwise. And that, my friends, is what it looks like to live forward from 50. That's all for this week's show. If you'd like to start living a more meaningful life, I encourage you to download our free guide to finding purpose, which is available at www.forwardfrom50.com. I'll have another inspirational interview on the next episode of the Forward from 50 podcast. Thanks for listening, and if you like the show, please consider leaving a review wherever you download the episodes.